Chuck Norris made Ellen DeGeneres straight. Chuck Norris kicked Neo out of Zion. Now Neo is, the two Chuck Norris iPod came with a real charger instead of just a USB cord. Chuck Norris knows where Carmen Sandiego is. Rudolph has a red nose because he got lippy and Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked him across the face several times. China was once bordering the United States, until Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked it all the way through the earth. Chuck Norris is what Willis was talking about. If you have $5 and Chuck Norris has $5, Chuck Norris has more money than you. Chuck Norris sent Jesus a birthday card on December 25 and it wasn't Jesus' birthday. Jesus was too scared to correct Chuck Norris and to this day December 25 is known as Jesus' birthday. When Chuck Norris had surgery, the anesthesia was applied to the doctors. Chuck Norris once broke the land speed record on a bicycle that was missing its chain and the back tire. Chuck Norris once kicked a baby elephant into puberty. Multiple people have died from Chuck Norris giving them the finger. Chuck Norris once tried to wear glasses. The result was him seeing around the world to the point where he was looking at the back of his own head. Pee Wee Herman got arrested for masturbating in public. The same day, Chuck Norris got an award for masturbating in public. Once a grizzly bear threatened to eat Chuck Norris. Chuck showed the bear his fist and the bear proceeded to eat himself, because it would be the less painful way to die. If Chuck Norris is late, time better slow the fuck down. Chuck Norris sleeps with a night light. Not because Chuck Norris is afraid of the dark, but the dark is afraid of Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris can touch MC Hammer. Chuck Norris ordered a Big Mac at Burger King, and got one. Chuck Norris always has sex on the first date. Always. A handicap parking sign does not signify that this spot is for handicapped people. It is actually in fact a warning that the spot belongs to Chuck Norris and that you will be handicapped if you park there. Chuck Norris frequently donates blood to the Red Cross. Just never his own. There is no such thing as tornadoes. Chuck Norris just hates trailer parks. Chuck Norris never cries. Because of this, when he's sad he roundhouse kicks himself and it makes him feel better since he knows he is the only one who can survive the roundhouse. Chuck Norris does not procreate, he breeds. When asked what type of vehicle he drives, Chuck Norris responded slyly with, "Don't you mean what kind of vehicle drives me?" Chuck Norris' evil twin brother, Richard Simmons, once approached Chuck with the hope of reconciliation. But at the sight of Richard's curly, well-kept hair, Chuck Norris became so enraged that he turned green with hate and ripped Richard Simmons' arms and legs off. This action was the origin of the Marvel comic badass, the Incredible Hulk. Chuck Norris doesn't worry about changing his clock twice a year for daylight savings time. The sun rises and sets when Chuck tells it to. Chuck Norris only masturbates to pictures of Chuck Norris. Filming on location for Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris brought a stillborn baby lamb back to life by giving it a prolonged beard rub. Shortly after the farm animal sprang back to life and a crowd had gathered, Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked the animal, breaking its neck, to remind the crew once more that Chuck giveth, and the good Chuck, he taketh away. Chuck Norris was the fourth wise man. He brought baby Jesus the gift of beard. Jesus swore it proudly to his dying day. The other wise men, jealous of Jesus' obvious gift favoritism, used their combined influence to have Chuck omitted from the Bible. Shortly after all three died of roundhouse kick-related deaths. Chuck Norris used live ammunition during all shootouts. When a director once said he couldn't, he replied, "Of course I can, I'm Chuck Norris," and roundhouse kicked him in the face. If paper beats rock, rock beats scissors, and scissors beats paper, what beats all three at the same time? Answer: Chuck Norris. When his martial arts prowess fails to resolve a situation, Chuck Norris plays dead. When playing dead doesn't work, he plays zombie. Although it is not common knowledge, There are actually 3 sides to the Force: the light side, the dark side, and Chuck Norris. Scientists used to believe that diamond was the world's hardest substance. But then they met Chuck Norris, who gave them a roundhouse kick to the face so hard, and with so much heat and pressure, that the scientists turned into artificial Chuck Norris. God offered Chuck Norris the gift to fly, which he swiftly declined for super-strength roundhouse ability. When Chuck Norris was denied a bacon McMuffin at McDonald's because it was 10:35, he roundhouse kicked the store so hard it became a KFC. Chuck Norris drinks napalm to quell his heartburn. A duck's quack does not echo. Chuck Norris is solely responsible for this phenomenon. When asked why, he will simply stare at you, grimmily. Chuck Norris once tried to defeat Garry Kasparov in a game of chess. When Norris lost, he won in life by roundhouse kicking Kasparov in the side of the face. Chuck Norris' roundhouse kick is so powerful, it can be seen from outer space by the naked eye. Chuck Norris doesn't believe in Germany. If you want a list of Chuck Norris enemies, just check the extinct species list. Chuck Norris has never blinked in his entire life. Never. Chuck Norris doesn't need to swallow when eating food. If Superman and the Flash were to race to the edge of space, you know who would win? Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris eats Transformer toys in vehicle mode and poos them out transformed into a robot. Ironically, Chuck Norris' hidden talent is invisibility. Chuck Norris owns the greatest poker face of all time. It helped him win the 1983 World Series of Poker despite him holding just a joker, a 2 of clubs, a 7 of spades, and a green number 4 from Uno and a Monopoly get-out-of-jail-free card. Chuck Norris invented water. Chuck Norris invented a language that incorporates karate and roundhouse kicks. So next time Chuck Norris is kicking your ass, don't be offended or hurt, he may be just trying to tell you he likes your hat. Chuck Norris went looking for a bar but couldn't find one. He walked to a vacant lot and sat there. Sure enough, within an hour and a half someone constructed a bar around him. He then ordered a shot, drank it, and then burned the place to the ground. Chuck Norris yelled over the roar of the flames, "Always leave things the way you found them." One time while sparring with Wolverine, Chuck Norris accidentally lost his left testicle. You might be familiar with it to this very day by its technical term, Jupiter. Chuck Norris is Luke Skywalker's real father. Contrary to popular belief, Chuck Norris, not the box jellyfish of northern Australia, is the most venomous creature on Earth. Within 3 minutes of being bitten, a human being experiences the following symptoms: fever, blurred vision, beard rash, tightness of the jeans, and the feeling of being repeatedly kicked through a car windshield. Chuck Norris does not use spell check. If he happens to misspell a word, Oxford will simply change the actual spelling of it. Before science was invented, it was once believed that autumn occurred when Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked every tree in existence. In the original pilot for Star Trek Next Generation, Chuck Norris can be seen powering the USS Enterprise warp drive with his roundhouse kicks. Chuck Norris isn't lactose intolerant. He just doesn't put up with lactose's shit. Chuck Norris doesn't eat. Rather, he kicks ass until he's full. Scientists in Washington have recently conceded that, if there were a nuclear war, all that would remain are cockroaches and Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris once threatened to sue Burger King because they refused to make it his way. When asked what his way detailed, he replied, "With barbed wire and nails, of course." He then roundhouse kicked the reporter for even asking. Chuck Norris never gets laid, rather, laid gets Chuck. Playgirl magazine once asked Chuck Norris to appear naked in an issue. Chuck laughed at the opportunity, saying, "There isn't enough paper in the world to contain my bearded member." He then killed the editors simply by unzipping his pants. Helen Keller's favorite color is Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris once walked down the street with a massive erection. There were no survivors. When Chuck Norris's wife burned the turkey one Thanksgiving, Chuck said, "Don't worry about it, honey," and went into his backyard. He came back 5 minutes later with a live turkey, ate it whole, and when he threw it up a few seconds later it was fully cooked and came with cranberry sauce. When his wife asked him how he had done it, he gave her a roundhouse kick to the face and said, "Never question Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris doesn't have AIDS, but he gives it to people anyway." When you open a can of whoop ass, Chuck Norris jumps out. On June 7, 1994, Chuck Norris entered the same restaurant supermodel Cindy Crawford was eating at. Instinctively, Cindy swept everything off the table, threw herself on it in a fit of lust, and begged Chuck to ravish her. After Chuck finished his beer, he obliged her. When Chuck's magnificent lead sperm cannoned into Cindy's womb, it went straight to one of her ovaries and roared, "Which one of you servile wenches thinks you can handle getting split open by the Chuck?" All of the eggs cowered in the corner. The same thing happened at the other ovary. "I didn't fucking think so," shouted the lead sperm, which then led the rest of the troops back into Chuck's balls. Chuck pulled out, roundhouse kicked Cindy in the face and told her, "Don't ever waste my time again." Chuck Norris can piss into gale force winds. There are no disabled people. Only people who have met Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris won Jumanji without ever saying the word. He simply beat the living shit out of everything that was thrown at him, and the game forfeited. Chuck Norris once bet NASA he could survive re-entry without a spacesuit. On July 19, 1999, a naked Chuck Norris re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, streaking over 14 states and reaching a temperature of 3,000 degrees. An embarrassed NASA publicly claimed it was a meteor, and still owes him a beer. Chuck Norris got a perfect score on his SATs, simply by writing Chuck Norris for every answer. Aliens do exist. They're just waiting for Chuck Norris to die before they attack. Chuck Norris once ate 372 ounces steaks in 1 hour. He spent the first 45 minutes having sex with his waitress. After much debate, President Truman decided to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima rather than the alternative of sending Chuck Norris. It was more humane. Chuck Norris doesn't see dead people. He makes people dead. Chuck Norris once went to a frat party, and proceeded to roundhouse every popped collar in sight. He then drank 3 kegs and shat on their floor, just because he's Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris found out about Conan O'Brien's lever that shows clips from Walker, Texas Ranger, and is working on a way to make it show clips of Norris having sex with Conan's wife. Chuck Norris doesn't have normal white blood cells like you and I. His have a small black ring around them. This signifies that they are black belts in every form of martial arts and they roundhouse kick the shit out of viruses. That's why Chuck Norris never gets ill. Chuck Norris's girlfriend once asked him how much would a woodchuck could chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. He then shouted, "How dare you rhyme in the presence of Chuck Norris," and ripped out her throat. Holding his girlfriend's bloody throat in his hand he bellowed, "Don't fuck with Chuck." 2 years and 5 months later he realized the irony of this statement and laughed so hard that anyone within a 100-mile radius of the blast went deaf.